Before I tell you this story, I have to let you know that this isn't my story. It's something that happened to a girl in my town. My cousin is a detective, and he thinks this is what happened to the girl based on the investigation. So here's the story.
Every evening after work, Emily followed the same routine: a walk through the park, a visit to the local coffee shop, and finally back to her cozy apartment. It was a routine that brought her comfort and a sense of normalcy. Little did she know someone had been watching her. It started subtly. One night, as she was heading home, she felt an inexplicable chill, as if someone's eyes were boring into her back. She glanced around but saw nothing unusual. She shrugged it off, attributing it to the autumn wind and her imagination. The feeling persisted over the next few weeks. She noticed small things: a figure always at the edge of her vision, footsteps echoing hers, a shadow that seemed to follow her every move. Her friends dismissed her concerns, telling her she was overthinking. One evening after a late shift, Emily decided to take a different route home, hoping to shake off the uneasy feeling. As she walked through a dimly lit alley, she heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind her. They matched her pace, growing louder with each step she took. Panic surged through her, and she quickened her pace, her heart pounding in her chest. She turned the corner and ducked into a small empty bookstore, hoping to lose whoever was following her. She peered out the window, her breath fogging up the glass. The street was empty. Emily sighed in relief, convincing herself it had been her imagination. After a few minutes, she left the bookstore and continued home, feeling slightly foolish for her fear. She reached her apartment and locked the door behind her, double-checking all the locks and windows. She tried to shake off the lingering sense of dread as she prepared for bed. In the middle of the night, Emily woke to a faint tapping sound. She sat up, her eyes scanning the dark room. The tapping continued, coming from her bedroom window. She slowly approached the window, her heart in her throat. Drawing back the curtain, she saw nothing but darkness. She breathed a sigh of relief, thinking it was just a branch or a bird. The next morning, Emily found a note slipped under her door. The message was simple yet chilling.
I see you.
Her blood ran cold. She rushed to the building manager, who promised to check the security footage. Hours later, he had no answers. There was no sign of anyone entering the building or slipping the note under her door. Days turned into weeks, and the stalking continued. Emily felt trapped, her every move shadowed by an unseen presence. She installed extra locks, changed her phone number, and even stayed with friends, but nothing seemed to deter her stalker. One night, after another fruitless meeting with the police, Emily returned home feeling defeated. She was exhausted and decided to take a hot shower to calm her nerves. As the steam filled the bathroom, she noticed a message scrawled on the fogged-up mirror.
I'm closer than you think.
She stumbled back, slipping on the wet floor, her mind racing. How had they gotten in? She was certain she had locked everything. Panic overtook her, and she grabbed her phone to call the police. Just as she was about to dial, her phone buzzed with a new message. A photo of her, taken from behind in the very bathroom she now stood in. The realization hit her like a truck. The stalker was inside her apartment. She had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The last thing she heard was the creak of a floorboard behind her, and the world went dark. Emily's disappearance was the talk of the town for months, but no trace of her was ever found. Her apartment remained untouched, a chilling reminder that sometimes the monsters we fear are not just in our imagination. Working the night shift at an old hospital had its eerie moments, but nothing could have prepared Sarah for what happened that fateful night. A registered nurse with 5 years of experience, she was accustomed to the usual nighttime oddities: the creaks of the aging building, the occasional flicker of lights, and the unsettling quiet that settled over the wards. But this was different. This was terrifying. At around midnight, she received a call from the front desk. The security guard, an old-timer named Frank, sounded unnerved. "Hey, Sarah," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "There's a man in the waiting area. Says he needs to see someone, but he won't tell me who. He's strange. Can you come down and talk to him? Sarah sighed, grabbing her flashlight and heading toward the lobby. When she arrived, she saw Frank standing nervously behind the reception desk, his eyes fixed on the figure sitting in the corner of the waiting area. The man was dressed in a tattered, old-fashioned coat, and his face was obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. His hands were clasped tightly in his lap, and he seemed to be muttering to himself. "Sir," Sarah called out, trying to sound authoritative, "can I help you?" The man slowly lifted his head, revealing a gaunt, pale face and piercing blue eyes. "I'm looking for my daughter," he said, his voice low and raspy. "She was brought here tonight." Sarah glanced at Frank, who shrugged helplessly. "What's her name?" she asked. "Lizzie," the man replied. "Lizzie Thompson?" Sarah's heart skipped a beat. There was no one by that name on the patient list. "I'm sorry, sir, but we don't have anyone by that name here. Are you sure this is the right hospital?" The man's eyes bore into hers, sending a chill down her spine. "She's here. I know she is." Frank stepped forward, his hand resting on the phone. "Sir, you need to leave. We can't have people loitering in the waiting area." The man stood up abruptly, his movements swift and unnatural. "She's here," he repeated more forcefully this time, "and I will find her." Sarah and Frank watched as the man walked down the hallway, disappearing into the darkness. They exchanged worried glances, and Sarah decided to follow him. "I'll go after him," she said. "Make sure he doesn't cause any trouble." Sarah's footsteps echoed in the silent corridor as she walked cautiously. The man seemed to have vanished into thin air. She checked the rooms one by one, finding nothing out of the ordinary. Just as she was about to give up and return to the lobby, she heard a soft crying sound coming from one of the rooms. Her heart pounding, Sarah pushed open the door to room 304. The room was dark, but her flashlight beam illuminated a small figure huddled in the corner. It was a little girl, no older than 7 or 8, wearing a white nightgown. She was sobbing quietly, her face buried in her hands. "Hey, sweetie," Sarah said gently, approaching the girl. "What are you doing here all alone?" The girl looked up, her tear-streaked face filled with fear. "I can't find my daddy," she whispered. "He said he would come back for me." Sarah's blood ran cold. "What's your name, honey?" "Lizzie," the girl replied, her voice trembling. Sarah felt a wave of dread wash over her. How could this be possible? There was no record of a Lizzie Thompson being admitted to the hospital. She reached out to comfort the girl, but as soon as her hand touched Lizzie's shoulder, the room temperature plummeted. The lights flickered and the walls seemed to close in around her. Suddenly, the man from the lobby appeared in the doorway. "Lizzie," he called out, his voice filled with relief. "I found you." The girl ran to him, and he scooped her up in his arms. They stood there bathed in the dim light, an eerie, otherworldly glow surrounding them. "Thank you," the man said, looking at Sarah with those piercing blue eyes. "Thank you for bringing us together." And then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, they vanished. The room was silent once more, the temperature returning to normal. Sarah stood there stunned, trying to process what had just happened. She quickly made her way back to the lobby, where Frank was waiting anxiously. "Did you find him?" he asked. Sarah nodded slowly. "Yes. And his daughter?" Frank's eyes widened in shock. "But how? There was no little girl here tonight." Sarah took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I don't know, Frank, but I think we've just witnessed something otherworldly." The rest of the night passed uneventfully, but the encounter left Sarah deeply shaken. She couldn't shake the image of the man and his daughter from her mind. The next day, she did some research and discovered that a man named Edward Thompson and his daughter Lizzie had died in a car accident near the hospital 50 years ago. Their spirits were said to haunt the hospital, searching for each other. Sarah never worked another night shift at Oak Ridge Hospital. The memory of that terrifying night remained with her, a chilling reminder of the unknown forces that sometimes cross into our world. The hospital staff still talks about the midnight visitor, and those who work the night shift now keep a watchful eye, always mindful of the ghostly presence that roams the halls in search of lost loved ones.